Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our Kansas Lend Family Education Series. And tonight is a really important subject on Social Security. I'm Sean Swindler with Kansas Lend, and I'm also the parent of a 23-year-old with autism and intellectual disabilities who receives SSI. And I know that despite going through that journey with my son and my family, I still have questions about Social Security, and I know a lot of you all do too. If you go ahead and put your put questions in the chat, we'll try to get to those as soon as possible. And of course, we'll have some back and forth time at the end as well, but sometimes it helps if they're written out. And we're very lucky tonight to have David Seymour with us. And I'll have David introduce himself, but he's with the Social Security Administration. And we're really pleased he's with us. And one final word, when we scheduled this, if you had told me that the Royals should be playing the Yankees in the ALDS tonight, I would have thought you were crazy. So thank you all for being here with the Royals game on. So I'm going to turn it over to David.
You know, Sean, that is proof positive that things can change quite drastically in a very short period of time, right? Sometimes we just have to roll with it, right? So that's what we're doing here today. So thank you, Sean, for the introduction, and really much love also to Stephanie Coleman for the opportunity to be here today. I'll start with just a very short story of how this all came about. I saw a Kansas Lend event on Facebook, and I was like, wow, I've never heard of this group before. That sounds like a great event. I couldn't make it, but I was like, let me see if there's contact information for, the event organizer. Stephanie's information was there. I sent her an email, said, hey, would you guys like to have information about Social Security? It sounds like it might be a good fit. She was like, you betcha. And so we had a nice kind of introductory meeting conversation to just talk about what that might look like, what we could do. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are here today with this webinar. So in my discussions with Stephanie, we obviously talked about the large gamut of topics that we could talk about. And that could easily take a half a day or more, right? We're not doing that today, right? So we're starting with kind of the foundational installment of just understanding the benefits, right? Basic entry-level benefits. So for some of you, you may be hearing things that you've heard before here today, if you're well-versed. But there is, if based on interest, if there's interest in doing more in-depth sessions about maybe more advanced topics, then we can definitely look at that in the future, right? Okay. And obviously, with questions that come through today, I'll do my best to kind of answer whatever you throw my way today, if I'm able, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my slides up here. And get to that just a second here. Here we go. Slideshow. And just a thumbs up or a verbal, yes, I can see your slides when it comes up. Pretty good. All right, very good. I see that. Wonderful. Good. I like to, before I start going here, I like to make sure everything is set. So on this opening slide, you see a little bit of everyone, and that's very intentional because, as most of us realize, Social Security is really there with us through many points in this journey called life, right? From when that number is assigned as a baby to when we start working, when we get married, file for benefits, and even when we pass away. There can be benefits paid to those left behind, right? So of course, our focus today is going to be on disability benefits, but it's always good to just kind of have that comprehensive understanding of Social Security, right? Knowing that it really does affect us. And so who am I? Why am I even qualified to be doing this webinar here today? I serve as the Senior Public Affairs Specialist for the administration out of the Kansas City region. And we do events like this for the 4-state area, so Missouri, Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska. And I got my start with the agency back in 2005. I was hired as a bilingual claims specialist. So Spanish is my second language. And I would be the person that you would engage with, whether it be over the phone, in the office, or if you filed your claim online, right? Helping you understand your benefits, what to look forward to, what to expect, et cetera. Okay. So I did that for about the first 5 years of my career. I spent about a year or more as a supervisor in one of our local field offices. And then I became a public affairs specialist. So doing events like this, attending health fairs, other events, doing community outreach, engaging with congressional offices, et cetera, handling media inquiries. Did that for several years. And then I came to the Kansas City region to be a technical training instructor, right? So a part of a team that helped train new claims specialists all across the nation on all of our policies and procedures and systems that we use to process claims. So it's been a good ride. I love my job with the agency. I know that no matter what I'm doing is helpful, right? I'm impacting people and hopefully making things better, right? By sharing information. And so hopefully you'll feel that enthusiasm as we kind of go through today's agenda, right? So we're going to start out with just a very basic overview of Social Security benefits. I like to call it like my elevator pitch, if you will, right? And then we'll do a deeper dive into disability benefits, making sure we understand the difference between Social Security and SSI, right? Two different programs, but also related in some ways. We'll talk about how to apply for benefits. And we'll also talk a little bit about the disability determination process, right? What that looks like, what is being evaluated. We'll talk a little bit about how to appeal a decision, right? If someone is denied and their rights to appeal, and also just a little bit about working while disabled, right? Definitely we could do a different webinar that is more focused on that topic alone, right? But we'll touch a little bit on that here today. I'll talk a little bit about some of our online services, some of the portions of our website that could be especially helpful. And then, of course, at the end, we'll have time for Q&A. But as Sean mentioned, as I'm going through the slides here today, please feel free. I'll put a question in the chat, and I'll do my best to kind of answer that as we go along. Okay. So, of course, when we're talking about Social Security, it really gets started with an acronym called FICA, right? FICA stands for the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, and it may show up on the paycheck as OASDI or Social Security, but this is the federal legislation that says wherever you work, a portion of your wages will go towards your eligibility for Social Security, and your employer matches your contribution, right? So you contribute 7.65% of your gross wages, your employer matches that, and the large majority of those wages or taxes collected, I should say, goes towards your eligibility for Social Security benefits. And a smaller portion goes towards eligibility for Medicare. Okay? And so, of course, we're going to be talking about the benefits here today. But kind of from a broad micro or macro level, right? How many people get benefits from Social Security? About 64.2 million individuals receive some type of Social Security benefit. The large majority of that number is individuals who are retired, right? Followed by disability beneficiaries and survivors, also dependents, right? We'll talk a little bit about what we mean by dependents here in a moment. But there's also a significant number of folks who receive payments from SSI, close to 5 million individuals. And then a smaller portion, 2.5 million, receive both a Social Security benefit and an SSI payment, right? And we'll kind of explore what that can look like. And so when we're talking about Social Security benefits, right, first and foremost, most people think of retirement benefits, right? And that is correct, right? Since most people receive that. And to be eligible for a retirement benefit, you have to be at least 62 years of age with at least 40 credits, which is about 10 years of earnings. And generally speaking, the longer you wait to start your retirement benefit, the higher it is, right? So if you started at 62, it would be, you'd receive the most reduction. The closer you get to your full retirement age, which is about 66 to 67, depending on your year of birth, the higher it gets. When we're talking about survivor benefits, kind of right there in the name, right? It's a benefit payable when someone passes away. Who could be eligible? Surviving or divorced spouses, minor or disabled adult children, and in some cases, parents who were dependent upon their child for at least half of their support. There's also a one-time payment of $255 that's payable to a surviving spouse or child. You may have heard that referred to as the lump sum death payment. Medicare is another coverage or benefit that Social Security is connected to, and it's the nation's federal health insurance program. Most folks become eligible when they turn age 65, as long as they've worked and paid into Social Security. They may also become eligible after being entitled to Social Security disability benefits for 24 months or more, or if they've been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease or Lou Gehrig's disease. Right? So end-stage renal disease meaning some type of kidney condition that requires dialysis or transplant. There's also instances where a spouse could become eligible for Medicare, even if they hadn't worked enough. Maybe they hadn't worked enough to be insured for Medicare, but if they were married to someone who was insured, they could become entitled to Medicare based on their spouse's record. Of course, today, we're going to be talking mostly about disability benefits. When we're talking about that under the umbrella of Social Security, it means a benefit payable to an adult that is unable to work because of medical conditions. And in order to receive a Social Security disability benefit, a person has to have worked enough and paid enough into Social Security to be eligible, right? Or be eligible based off of a parent's record, which we'll look closer at here in a moment. Okay. I'm gonna pause here for just a second. I'm gonna go to the next slide, and I'm gonna continue to talk, but I'm gonna turn off my video because I need some more light in here. It's getting dark in my room, okay? So on this slide, right, what we're looking at is that others may be eligible for benefits on the record, right? So when a person files for benefits, right, we are always interested in whoever else might be eligible for benefits on the record. So when we take an application, right, we're going to ask, do you have any minor children? So that would be any children younger than 18 or younger than 19 is still in high school. Do you have any disabled adult children? Okay. And what we mean by that are any children who were found to be disabled before the age of 22. We're going to talk more about that in the coming slides. We're also interested if you are currently married or if you were previously married and how those marriages ended. Right? Did they end in divorce or did they end in death? Right? Of course, if they ended in death, we'd be talking about survivor benefits, right? And there are some requirements to be eligible for a spouse or a divorced spouse benefit. Right? You have to be at least age 62 or caring for a minor or disabled child. And if you're a divorced spouse, one of those things has to be true as well, either the age or caring for a minor or disabled child. But you must also be unmarried at the time that you're filing for the spouse benefit. The marriage has to have lasted at least 10 years. And your ex-spouse, meaning the person upon whose record you're filing for benefits, must be of age, so age 62, or entitled to disability benefits. Right, so not expecting you to remember all of those details about spouse or divorced spouse, entitlement, but the key here is when someone becomes entitled to Social Security benefits, we want to make sure we pay anyone who could be eligible based on this criteria. Okay. So let's talk more specifically about disability benefits. Okay. Kind of from the outset, high level looking at things here. The average monthly disability benefit is just shy of $1,400 a month, right? And as most of us know, Social Security was not meant to be the only source of income for individuals, right? If they become disabled or when they retire, but we know that that is a reality for many, right? And when we're talking about how many people live with a disability, we look at information from the US Census Bureau. So about 85.2 million people in the US, about 27% of the population, have some type of a disability. That doesn't mean that they're receiving benefits, of course, right? We know many people who have a disabling condition but are still able to work. But of that 85.2 million, 55.1 million live with some sort of a severe disability, right? So it is likely that they are receiving Social Security benefits and or SSI, right? Or perhaps a combination of both. And we'll take a little look at that here too today as well. So when we're talking about disability under the umbrella of Social Security, right? This is the definition of disability for an adult, right? We will also talk a little bit about what it means for children, okay? But when we're talking about disability for an adult, the Social Security Act defines disability as someone who cannot work due to a severe medical condition that has lasted or is expected to last at least 1 year or results in death. And so there's kind of that duration element there. And their condition or conditions must prevent them from doing substantial gainful employment. We're going to look more at what that means, that substantial gainful employment here in a moment. But when we're talking about this concept of work, right, it must prevent them from work that they did in the past, right, prevent them from doing work, I should say, that they did in the past, and it must prevent them from adjusting to other work, all right? So we're gonna, especially when we look at the disability determination process, we're gonna take a much deeper look at all of the elements listed here in this definition. Okay. So when we're talking about Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, right, as the acronym is used sometimes. Monthly benefit is based on how much a person has worked and paid into Social Security, right? And we see kind of another repeat of the definition there, a person that cannot work because of a significant disabling condition. There is nothing partial or temporary about it. Social Security is not AFLAC or short-term or long-term disability insurance that might be offered through an employer. And we see again there that medical condition has to be severe enough where it's expected to last at least a year or be terminal. And in order to be eligible for a disability benefit, oh, wow. Thank you. Someone just posted in the chat, are you still presenting slides? And that's weird. Let me know if they're back up.
Okay. We can still see your slides.
You can still see them? Okay, great, Sean.
Yeah.
So Kristen messaged me that she must be having an issue on her end there. Okay, thanks for that. Hey, good. I like to check in like that. If something's going on, let us know, okay? So in order to file for disability benefits, you have to be younger than full retirement age. So like I mentioned earlier, full retirement age is somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on your year of birth. There are no disability benefits payable after you reach your full retirement age. And if someone is working when they file for disability benefits, they cannot be making more than a certain amount, right? And that amount is referred to the substantial gainful activity, or SGA limit. For non-blind individuals, here in 2024, that amount is $1,550 in gross earnings. And for blind individuals, it's $2,590 in gross earnings. Okay. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like and some elements of that when we look at the disability determination process, right? And again, Social Security is a pay-to-play program. So in order to be eligible, you had to have worked enough and paid enough into Social Security to be eligible for the benefit. And how that works for disability benefits is you have to have worked enough in the most recent years to be insured for a disability benefit. And so I liken it to car insurance, right? You can pay your car insurance forever and ever and ever. And if you stop paying your premiums, then eventually your coverage runs out pretty quickly, right? Or your coverage lapses, right? It's pretty quick for car insurance if that happens. But for Social Security disability, usually you have to have enough earnings within 5 out of the last 10 years, right, before you become disabled. And it's less for individuals who are younger. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about some requirements for disabled adult children, right? Because I know that's probably top of mind for most of us here today. And so when we're talking about Social Security disability benefits, right, for disabled adult children, to be eligible, like I kind of mentioned earlier, right, they have to be found disabled prior to the age of 22. And that would mean, and we're looking at potential eligibility on their parent's record, right? So if a parent has retired, filed for disability themselves, or passed away, right? Okay, so we're looking at a survivor benefit. This disabled adult child could be eligible on that parent's record. Now, when it comes to work, right, we also are evaluating the work activity for disabled adult children. And if they end up working above SGA after the age of 22, that would mean that very likely that they are not entitled to disabled adult child benefit. And one of the things that can sometimes be complicating or challenging, right, when it comes to when a person files for benefits, is the time maybe that has passed, right? And if there's a lot of time that has passed before, an individual has filed for benefits, sometimes that means we're not able to access some of those important medical records and medical evidence to find a person disabled before the age of 22. Right, so if you're in a situation where you're working with someone, who might be in that space, maybe they haven't filed yet for whatever reason, whatever you can do to secure their medical records, because practices go out of business, other challenges can happen. People move states, and it can be challenging, right? So whatever you can do to kind of secure that medical evidence can be helpful. So we talked about Social Security benefits. And before we go to SSI, I'm just going to check the chat because I feel like I saw a question earlier, and Amy asked a question that reads, I have a child, adult of 32 years old. I will soon be 62. Would I be eligible as his caregiver? So Social Security does not pay caregiver benefits. That is not anything under the umbrella of Social Security benefits. But because you're turning 62, whenever you file for benefits, your child could be eligible for benefits on your record, kind of like as I outlined earlier. But that is a good question, and a question that we get often. You know, people ask about the possibility of caregiver benefits, and those are not under the Social Security umbrella. Okay, great question. So now let's talk a little bit about SSI, right? SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. And this is a federal program that, yes, we do manage. It is under the big umbrella of Social Security. And it provides monthly payments to people who have limited income and resources. Notice that up until now, I've not said anything about income or resources, right? Because that is not a criteria for eligibility for Social Security benefits. Okay? You could have $0 in the bank, you could have $1 million in the bank, and that doesn't matter for Social Security purposes. Okay? But it does for SSI. And so the first and foremost for SSI, that's what we're looking at. And who can get SSI? Well, anyone. Anyone who is 65 or older, and anyone of any age who is blind or has a disabling condition and has limited income and resources. And we're going to look at what that means here. One thing I forgot to mention, and you all have probably noticed it, but at the bottom of some of the slides, you'll see links to certain portions of our website. You know, they do a deeper dive into the particular topic. So please feel free to make a note, you know, bookmark that site if there's something you wanted to check out or investigate a little more. So when we're talking about income and resources for SSI, what does that mean? Well, income is just that. Any money that a person is receiving, right? If they're working, if they're getting a Social Security benefit or some other type of pension or benefit, if their food and shelter is being provided for them, we have to take that into account, right? The way we evaluate that may vary, but we take that into account. Right? And when we're talking about resources, we're talking about the value of things that a person owns, right? Such as real estate, you know, bank accounts, cash, stocks, bonds. If they own property, more than one vehicle, those are all things that we take into account. And the combined value of those resources cannot be higher than the limits shown here on the slide. So for an individual, the combined value cannot be more than $2,000. If it's a couple, meaning two individuals who are married or holding out as such, filing for SSI, the combined value cannot be more than $3,000. And for children, right, who are living with one parent, $4,000, or with two parents, $5,000. Right, so those resource limits are pretty low, right? And that does mean that sometimes individuals are not eligible for SSI. Right? We're also looking at where a person lives, right? Do they live in their own household? Are they living with someone? Are they in an institution or some type of group care facility? Those things can impact how much of a payment a person may be eligible for from SSI. When we're talking about SSI for children, okay, a child under SSI is someone who is disabled, who is neither married nor head of a household, and they're under age 18, or they're under age 22. There's that age 22 again, right? and they are a student regularly attending school. Right? I'm guessing that some of you here today may have family members that might fall into one of these categories, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So some particular requirements for children under the SSI program, right? You know, if there's a child that has limited income and resources, they could be eligible. When we're looking at eligibility, though, we are also taking into account the income and resources of the parent or parents, parent or parents who are living in the household, right? So kind of like I mentioned earlier, this is why some children may not be eligible for SSI until later on, right? Because of the parental income or resources. And we're going to look at what that means, because I know Michelle has a question here in the chat about her minor daughter and when benefits might switch or change. Okay. And so when we're talking about the disability determination, right, for a child, they are not necessarily evaluated based on the same criteria as an adult. For adults, one of the key elements of that determination process is looking at their ability to work, right? But we know that's not a fair expectation for children, right? So if the child is under 18, we're looking for physical or mental impairment that results in a marked severe limitation in functioning as when compared to their peers, right, in a similar age range. Okay. There's function reports that are completed to evaluate, as a part of evaluating that, right? And the child must be either blind or disabled. Right? If they're blind, then that is where they would need to meet the same definition of blind that applies for adults. And the same type of duration needs to be there, right? So the condition needs to have some type of permanent nature, right? Expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. So SSI, right? When a child is approaching the age of 18, right? This means that a new disability determination would be needed based on adult rules or the adult criteria, right? And at that point, parental income and resources are no longer counted for eligibility purposes, right? We're only looking at the income and resources of the child, soon to be adult, right? And if the child continues to live with the parent, right, but is not, responsible for paying their fair share in the household or things of that nature, we have to take that into account when calculating their SSI payment. And sometimes we get a lot of questions about this, like, okay, well, I've got a kid going to be 18 next month, or in a couple of months. How early can I file that application, right? Because you want to make sure that benefits don't stop, or that there isn't any kind of interruption. And that application can be filed as early as their 18th birthday. Right. So kind of specific to Michelle's question in the chat, which reads, if my daughter receives SSI and is 13, when or does it switch to SSDI? Right. So when would she go from SSI payments to Social Security disability benefits? Right. If your daughter continues to be disabled after the age of 18, right, then she could be entitled on your record or the father's record or the other parent's record when either you or the other parent files for benefits, right? So you file for retirement, you file for disability benefits, you file, you wouldn't file for your own survivor benefit, but if one of you passed away, she could be entitled on that record at that time, right? if she has earnings of her own, she could become entitled, potentially entitled to disability benefits based on her own record. Okay, so hopefully that helps shed a little light on that, Michelle. One thing to be aware of that can be a helpful tool are ABLE accounts, right? And if you have heard of ABLE accounts before, use the raise your hand feature. I'm always curious as to how many people might be familiar with ABLE accounts. Under the reaction tab, I think there might be an option there to raise your hand, or feel free to type it in the chat too, if you've heard of ABLE accounts. Great, okay, so some of you have, that's great. And so this can be a really big advantage, right? When you're trying to secure the future for, you know, a child that is, you know, managing, right, conditions or disabling conditions, right? And so individuals who became disabled before turning 26 can save money in a tax-advantaged savings and investment account. And you can save up to $100,000 without that affecting their eligibility for Social Security or SSI payments. Right, and so the key to that is that the account does have to be administered by a qualified ABLE program. And there on our website, we have a spotlight that talks more about the ABLE account. And on the Ticket to Work website, there's more information there about that. So that might be something to consider, right? When you're looking at kind of, what do you call it, financial forecasting or planning, right, for your loved one. Okay. So we've talked about Social Security disability and SSI, right, making sure that we understand the differences between the two. And I need all of you to promise me that if you are going to use the acronyms, right, that you make sure that you're using them correctly, right? Because sometimes there's confusion out there, right? People will say SSI when they really mean Social Security or vice versa, right? And as you can tell, they're very different, right? So this slide here is really meant to be that nice comparison contrast between the two. On the left-hand side, of course, we're talking about Social Security. Somebody has worked and paid into Social Security in order for that to be eligible for that benefit. You know, it's payable to adults, right? And, you know, others may be eligible for benefits, right? Children, minor children, disabled adult children, spouses, okay? Whereas SSI is needs-based, right? We're looking at income and resources first and foremost. And SSI payments come from the General Treasury Fund. So all of us who pay Social Security, or all of us who pay taxes, federal taxes, a portion of our federal taxes goes towards the SSI program, right? It's not based on any kind of earnings history, right? And anyone could get SSI, as long as they meet those income requirements, and for if they're younger than 65, that they have a qualifying disabling condition. Okay. So now we talk a little bit about when should you apply for benefits, right? And we encourage folks to apply as soon as you become disabled. The application determination process can take 6 to 8 months or longer. Used to be 3 to 5 months, but because of the persistent staffing challenges that we've faced as an agency, that time frame has been expanded, right? And of course, anytime you can respond to any information requests or, you know, share information, you know, quicker, that can help us process that application more quickly. The links here on this slide take you to kind of like our home pages, one for Social Security disability, and then that second link takes you to our home page for SSI. Okay. And then how to apply, right? Well, filing online is a great method for Social Security and or SSI, right? If an individual is disabled and they're at least 62 right, but they haven't reached their full retirement age, they can file for retirement and disability benefits at the same time. And you may think, what's the benefit of that? Well, they could start receiving their retirement benefit first while they wait for a determination on that disability application. And if approved, then we would stop paying them a retirement benefit and start paying them a disability benefit. Okay, but we know not everybody's going to be able to do business with us online. We understand that. So we do have an online tool that you could assist someone with to complete to say, hey, I need to file for benefits, but I've maybe had a challenge of scheduling an appointment. So by submitting this request on the online tool, that will protect them for potential benefit eligibility. All right. But also too, we do still schedule appointments over the phone, and that can be done by contacting, our national call center, 8 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Okay. And so those are the ways, and we like to make sure that people are aware of their options, right? Like I said, we know not everybody's going to be able to do business with us online, but there are other ways, right, to let us know that they want to file. And Lacey, I see your question here in the chat. You have a child that's 15, but doesn't qualify for SSI, probably because of the income resource requirements. But yes, when she turns 18, right, she could file as an adult, and we're only looking at her income and resources at that time. Right, so that's kind of the exact scenario I kind of described earlier. So yeah, that does, based on what you shared, that does sound like that. Okay. And so how to apply for SSI, right, for a minor child, right? We encourage individuals to start by looking at the Child Disability Starter Kit on our website. That helps you understand what all is required for the application. It also will help you determine if they would be eligible based on income and resources, right? We have a kind of a calculator, and we go a little bit more in depth about what we look at, what are the income and resource limits, right? So starting there is helpful. And then you can initiate that application online there on the website right there, or scheduling that appointment, and also completing the child disability report, right? That would be where you're certain, fairly certain that you would qualify based on income and resources. And then that disability report is where you would provide information about their doctors, their conditions, things like that. Okay. And so in either with whatever path you would walk down in terms of starting to file, know that we would always need to get the technical application or the non-medical application, right? We need to evaluate those income, resource, and living arrangement information. Okay. And so application has been submitted, whether it's Social Security, SSI, or both, right? Our responsibility is to make sure that a person meets the non-medical requirements, right? So for Social Security, did you work enough years to qualify? Are you insured for the benefit? For SSI, do you meet those income, resource, living arrangements? And then for both applications, we need to evaluate any current work activity. If a person is working, are they making more than that SGA amount, that we looked at earlier? Are they getting any special assistance to do their work? Are they, allowed to work at a lower standard of productivity, et cetera? We have to evaluate those kinds of details about their work activity. And if we find that they're not working, right, or not working SGA, and they meet all those other requirements, we're able to send that application to the Disability Determination Services Office in your state. Okay. And so when we send that claim to DDS, right, for short, they are the state agency that completes the medical determination, right? And they're comprised of doctors and disability specialists. They request medical evidence, not just from what you submit on the application, but also directly from the doctors and hospitals you tell us about. And they use that evidence, right, to evaluate whether a person is disabled, right? And we're going to look at that process or that evaluation process here in a second. One of the things that is a part of that process is the Compassionate Allowances Initiative. And this is a way for us to quickly identify diseases and other conditions that no matter what, we know that they meet the medical criteria, right, to be considered a disabling condition. So it allows us to kind of curtail some of the, maybe some of the normal medical development that we would do in other situations, right? And it allows us to maybe focus on other elements of the application, right? So there's nothing special that a person has to do for us to consider if a condition meets the compassion allowances requirement. There are close to 300 conditions that have already been designated as compassion allowances, right? You can check those out on the website there. What is most important is that you let us know all the conditions that a person is suffering from, right? That's what's most critical. And then we automatically scan those applications for that, right? So we still have to evaluate work activity, you know, and those types of things for adult claims, right? But this can be a way for us to speed up that medical decision, right? And as part of the disability determination process, we have what's called a blue book, right? This is the nitty gritty, right? When you're trying to determine if a condition or how a condition is evaluated, what's being looked at, this is the comprehensive guide as to what the DDS examiners use to evaluate claims, right? So it lists the specific criteria that is needed, that we need to see to make a favorable disability determination, right? So it can be helpful perhaps to look at this blue book, right? And in comparison with the medical evidence to see, okay, does this person's medical evidence, is it detailed enough, descriptive enough, right, of their conditions and how those conditions impact them? That can be a great resource to kind of look at, right? And sometimes you might be able to be in a position to be the best advocate to ensure that certain aspects of their condition are properly documented in medical records, right? So all that build up, right, to talk about the actual disability determination process, right? How is it made? A 5-step process, right? The examiners are first looking to see if someone is working, right? If they are, then we have to figure out how much, are they getting any special assistance, et cetera, kind of like I was explaining earlier. If we find that they're not working substantially, then we move on to step 2. Is their medical condition severe? Is it expected to last at least 10 months or 12 months or more, or result in death? And then we need to see, does their impairment meet or medically equal a listing, right? That goes back to what I was talking about in the blue book, right? When they're saying they have this condition, and when we look at the medical evidence, how does that medical evidence line up with what is identified or described in the blue book? Then in steps 4 and 5, we go back to that concept of work. Can they do the work that they did before? And then can they adjust to any other type of work? Right? So of course, these steps here are very much adult driven, right? Because we're looking at the concept of work, right? And that would apply, right? For individuals, we're looking at a disabled adult child. Those working elements would be a part of that determination for Social Security. And for SSI, right, if we're looking at SSI for a child, a minor child, we're still looking at those physical or mental impairments and their functioning abilities, right? So there's other criteria that kind of goes into that process. So the claim is evaluated. We're looking at, we looked at all the evidence, we requested documents, et cetera, and we arrive at a decision, right? When the state agency makes a determination on the case, we will send a letter, right? That says one or the other, either you're approved for benefit, right? Show you the amount. Maybe in the case of SSI, sometimes we need more information to kind of evaluate payment, right? But ultimately, we'll send you an award letter that shows you, the amount of your benefits, when the payment start, et cetera, right? But if not approved, the letter will explain why and will tell you how to appeal that determination, right, if you don't agree with it. And we really encourage folks to appeal, right? If they feel that they were, that they were unjustly denied, they have 60 days from the date of that denial notice to appeal that decision. That appeal can be filed online. An attorney is not required, but some people do choose to have an attorney, right? And there are 4 levels of appeal. The reconsideration level means the claim would go back to the DDS, Disability Determination Service. A different examiner would take a look at at what happened in the initial application, along with any additional evidence that may be submitted, and arrive at a new determination. If it's denied at the reconsideration level, you can request a hearing before an administrative law judge. That is a little bit more of a longer process, right? A little more detailed, right? And then if denied at that level, you can ask that hearing decision be reviewed by the appeals council, and then if not satisfied, by the federal court. And so there are options, and we do encourage folks to pursue those options as they deem appropriate or as they see fit. Okay. I'm going to pause there for just a second. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I want to be respectful of time. So I'm going to kind of scroll back up here and look at some of the questions that came in from the last time. Lacey says that she has a child that is 15. Oh, yep, nope, I covered that one. There we go. Okay, and Gina said, when a disabled adult child receives SSI starting at 18 and lives with a parent, and the parent charges the adult child rent, does that qualify the individual for the full allowable amount of SSI? Yes, based in that element alone, right? That we're not looking at other income or resources. But yes, based on what you're describing there, yes, they should be able to receive the full amount of SSI. And if SSA did not put a copy of the rent agreement in their files, with sending in another copy of the rent agreement, potentially impact the amount of SSI the adult child would get. I mean, potentially, we'd have to look at specifics for that. So yeah, as long as there is proof that the child is contributing their fair share, right? Then that usually results in an increased SSI payment. And then Cindy asks, I have a 17-year-old son who is receiving survivor benefits and is disabled. How does that work after he turns 18? It means that the survivor benefits that he's receiving right now are simply because he is a survivor. For him to continue to receive benefits after age 18, we would need to make a disability determination, right? So he would need to contact us, schedule a phone appointment, okay, to file for disability benefits as a disabled adult child, okay? And then Sean had a great question here. If a person receiving SSI is doing gig work, right, Etsy, Fiverr, you know, those types of sites, how is that reported as income? That's a very good question, Sean. And I'm going to date myself here. It's been that long since I have been in the technical realm, you know, taking claims. When I started taking claims back in 2005, online work was not really a big thing, right? So that would be work that could still be reported as wages through our online reporting app, right? Through either My Social Security account or the wage reporting app. If you're not able to enter it there, then just submitting that information to the local office with details of the work and whatnot can be a path there. And then a technician would review the information. Usually it would just probably be counted as income in the month that it was received. But of course, we'd want to look at the frequency of the work, and we'd want to look at those details as well. Okay. So we do have a few moments left. I have, I know I overshot today, but I did it on purpose because I wanted to be prepared for questions, right, that I would get, and I wanted to make sure I took care of questions. I have maybe about 10 more slides I could go over, but I don't want to do that because, I mean, I'm fine with doing that if you all are fine with that. I'm just trying to be respectful of time. So.
If you wanted to hit those really quick, because you don't know what you don't know, just so that people know that information exists, and then we could take a few more questions. And
that's great. That's great. I'll do that, Sean. And what I'll do too, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, I will send a copy of the presentation in PDF format to you, Sean, as well as Stephanie. Okay.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
You got it. You got it. So working while disabled, it can happen. The short of it is, yes, it can happen. And most of you probably know that. But the work activity and wages do need to be reported to Social Security so that we can properly evaluate a person's work activity, right? Here on this slide are some links to not only our publications about working while disabled and how we evaluate work activity under Social Security as opposed to SSI, right? Because the rules are different. But there's also a link to our Red Book, which is I've like the Bible of work incentives for Social Security. It really articulates how we evaluate, what's countable, what allowed work expenses are, etc. Right? So those are some resources, as well as the Ticket to Work program. This can be a great program for individuals to participate in. They can get some great supportive services that really allow them to be able to work. And if they're participating in the Ticket to Work program, it usually means that we would not complete a medical review of their eligibility. Okay. There is a difference between Medicare and Medicaid. In short, Medicare is federal, Medicaid is through the state, and is usually needs-based. Right? That's the skinny, the short and sweet of that slide. And representative payees, right? This is a way for us to select someone who can receive and manage a person's benefits when they are unable to manage their own affairs, right? You do have to apply to become a representative payee, right? Okay. And we have a page that on our website that talks all about what it means to be a payee, what your reporting responsibilities are, etc. How to complete a representative payee accounting report, things of that nature. And when a person files for benefits with Social Security or SSI, they can tell us up to 3 individuals that they would like to be considered, right, as a representative payee for them if the need arose. Okay. Our website, most of you are probably familiar with it. The words that jump out to you the most are prepare, apply, and manage, right? Hopefully, that's what you're seeing when you look at the page here, because that's exactly what we want people to do. The drop-down menus at top can be a nice, quick way to get to where you need to go. Benefits, Medicare, card, and record. And that search window right there is worth its weight in gold. Let's say you don't even know where to start, but you do have a keyword. Type it in, and the results usually are pretty spot on, right? And I usually test it out before I do presentations, just to make sure that we're on point with that. At the bottom right-hand corner there of your screen, you'll see two portions of our website that can be especially helpful. The first one is where you can get all of our publications. Pretty much all of our publications on any topic. And then the second one, of course, if you need a particular form that you need to complete and submit to us, you can get that there as well. The SSI page, I referenced it a little bit earlier, but this is kind of what it looks like. You can easily see if you meet the income and resource guidelines. It'll kind of take you through a kind of a basic calculator you can use there, gives the kind of skinny on eligibility there. The disability benefits planner. This is a great starting place, right? If you're trying to work with someone or you're just kind of starting out on this and you're wanting to understand what Social Security disability benefits may look like. That's a great page to begin with. And then we also have a page called Information for Helping Others, right? Or for people helping others. This has a lot more information that goes beyond the disability realm, right? But this could be a great resource, maybe a kind of where you start when you're helping someone. The My Social Security account, hopefully most of you have created yours already, so you know what to expect for your own benefits, right? But if you haven't, encouraging folks to create one and getting your account can be a great step in the right direction. If you're not receiving benefits, of course, the biggest advantage is getting in there, looking at your Social Security statement, making sure you understand, what can be paid in benefits from your record, when you're eligible. If you need a replacement Social Security card, you can do that online as well. Things like that. These are all things that we don't want people waiting unnecessary amounts of time to do in one of our offices or over the phone with us. Right? And to create an account or sign in, it's going to require you to use login.gov or ID Me as kind of like a third-party verification element. Right? And once you do that, you'll be redirected back to our site, and you'll get an activation code where you can log into your account. All right. This is kind of what your account looks like when you sign in. If you haven't started receiving benefits, you can look at your statement. We have retirement ready fact sheets based on certain age ranges. You can see your earnings record, right? Things like that, right? Again, kind of some of that financial planning piece, right? And if you are receiving benefits, the biggest advantage of having your account is that you can do stuff with us online, right? Like, who wants to wait in line to change your address or phone number, or, get a benefit verification letter? These are all things that we want folks to be able to do with us online, right? And if you're working and getting disability or SSI, you can report those wages through your My Social Security account. All right. Shameless, but not shameless plug to register for our free webinars. If you liked what I did today, me and other members of my regional public affairs team, we offer webinars on other Social Security topics. So take a look at our page there and see if there might be some upcoming webinars that you'd be interested in. And a shameless plug to follow us on social media. We post good information. We can't always guarantee what people post in the comments, right? So proceed with caution in the comments, right? But we usually post timely and relevant information. We've got some cool videos on our YouTube page as well about our benefits and online services. And we're always looking for good people to come work for us too. So check out our LinkedIn page for any potential job opening.
And you have a question in the chat. I don't know if I missed it. This person works for a school system. Could they receive a copy of the blue and red books?
Yeah, you can actually download a copy on our website. Yeah. So you can get Excellent. That there. I see that, yeah, Excellent. From from Amy, and let's see what else. If my daughter receives SSI and they are going on my income, do I have to report my stipends from Lind? Yes. Yes, probably. I'll say probably so. Like I said, I've been out of that technical realm for a while, so you would want to communicate that with the technician, or ask that when there's a review of her income and resources. You would want to do that there. Okay. Good questions here today. I knew there would be great questions here today. So let's see what else. Yes, you are welcome, Molly. Molly said, thank you for your time. I know, Amy, I'm old school and like receiving booklets. I hear you. Yeah, there may be an opportunity to request that from us online. When you go to print the document, there may be an option there to request it, a print version. Okay.
If we wanted to make some disability benefits planning, can we call a certain number?
No, we are not available for planning purposes. If a person is ready to file, then we'll schedule an appointment, right, for them to file, but we do not necessarily have the resources, to kind of walk people through and help them plan. So
I will encourage you to
go ahead.
I will note
that
KDHE, as part of the Working Healthy program, has free disability benefits planners that are fantastic and incredibly helpful. So if your child is transition age, so over 16, they can sit down and meet with you and really plan out what that Social Security benefit is going to look like, what it's going to do, talk to you about ABLE accounts, all of those kind of things. So that's something we can help you find if you're wondering how to find those. But if you go on Working Healthy for Kansas, you can find those benefits planners.
That's great. Thank you for that, Sean. I figured that resource might have been out there somewhere, but I was like, I wish we could do that. I wish we had the resources as an agency, right, to be able to do that, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So I want to just, again, thank you all for your undivided attention. If you're going to go watch the Royals game, go watch it, right? Have fun, right? And
David?
if not,
Absolutely.
enjoy the rest of your evening. Yeah. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hi, David.
Thank you so much, David.
This is Gina. Just a real quick question that you didn't see in the chat is I just wanted to make sure, are we allowed to help create an online account for an individual with intellectual disabilities? Because I was thinking at one time when you went to set up an account, it said if you are not that person, you could not set the account up.
Right. Great question, Gina. And, I normally cover that when I talk about my Social Security accounts, right? So yes, you can assist someone else in creating their account, but they do need to have their own email address. They need to be able to answer the questions, right? It's kind of like you can't do it without them being cognizant of the fact that you're creating the account, right? And that you are assisting them. So that's part of just kind of like that security thing. We don't want people creating accounts and they're not aware or understand kind of what's happening, right? So
Okay,
hopefully
great.
that helps a little bit.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, and so and also too, my Social Security accounts are only for individuals age 18 or older, right? So I know sometimes people want to do it, for their minor child, and so there's no account for a minor child, right? 18 and older. Wonderful. Well, with that, Sean, I'll turn it back over to you if there was anything else you wanted to share.
Well, thank you, David, for this fairness. I've been to a lot of Social Security presentation. That may have been the best one I've ever seen. So I really appreciate what you did. You did a great job sharing this information. And I just want to say thank you all for joining us tonight, and look for our next family education series coming up in, would it be November? Yes, in November. And I believe we're going to have the folks who run the Kansas 988 hotline joining us, which is that's the new number. It used to be the suicide prevention number, and now there's an array of mental health services available just by dialing 988, and a live person will talk to you, and it's a really fantastic resource. So hope you can join us then.
Right on. Well, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.